So signs that you've hardened your heart against God. All right, signs that you've hardened your heart against God. First, you refuse to acknowledge God's authority. You refuse to acknowledge God's authority. That's really the whole deal with Pharaoh here, isn't it? Check out verse 3. We're told Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me?" That's ultimately what it means to harden your heart. It means that even though it's not working, right? You push forward in your resolve to do things your way. We call it, stubborn stupidity, right? Sometimes. But really, what's at the core of that attitude is pride. It's being so wrapped up in your image, so wrapped up in appearing to be perfect, so wrapped up in others thinking that even though everybody else makes mistakes, you don't, right? That's what's behind the hardness of our hearts. Go back to verses 1 and 2 for a second. Look again at what God calls all these plagues that have come up against the Egyptians at this point. He doesn't call them plagues. No, he calls them signs. All right? I've hardened Pharaoh's heart that I may perform these signs among them. So you may tell your grandson or your son and your grandson how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and performed my signs among them so that you may know that I am the Lord. That word signs is important because, you see, these weren't just arbitrary magic tricks that God was doing here. We've talked about this already. Everything that God did here was designed to show both Israel and both Israel and Egypt the nature of God's power and authority. Just like we use signs around here to help you, find your way around. Restrooms this way, sanctuary this way, right? These plagues were designed to systematically humble Egypt and bring Israel freedom. But stubbornly and tragically, even though logic pointed to this undeniable truth that the God of Israel was more powerful than anything Pharaoh had ever confronted, Pharaoh still refused to humble himself before him because of his pride. That's how the human heart is. It doesn't matter how much evidence confronts us, if it pushes against our will, if it pushes against our faulty understanding of how things should be, we will reject it. Pharaoh rejected God. Egypt rejected God. Fast forward to the New Testament. Israel rejected Jesus because Jesus didn't come with political power. Because Jesus didn't come with political authority. And the truth is, we will reject Jesus because we like our way of life better when our hearts are hard. And there's no shortage of evidence to prove that God is real. There's no shortage of evidence to prove that Jesus is his son. There's no shortage of evidence to prove his authority in the world. If you want, I'll be happy to lay all that out for you, but I'm convinced that human argument is not enough to bring people out of unbelief. Many people refuse to believe, not because the evidence is unconvincing. Many people refuse to believe because they refuse to give the evidence a chance, because their hearts have been hardened in their pride. I pray that's not you.